and he's here. So, everyone, give it up right now. Adam Green, go.
Woo!
Welcome. Sit right here. We're going to keep these in case Felicity and Dave come.
Oh, Felicity and Dave are coming.
They may or may not. So, it's going to be an adventure.
Hi.
Woo!
Thank you guys so much for having me. I've been wanting to come here for so long, and this is the one good thing that came of the fucking strike was that so first the pandemic happened, which canceled everything I was working on, and then things started moving again, and then there was the strike, which went on for.
The sound guy told me if that happened, just bang it.
Just give me a shout out. So yeah, it's been 3 years. Just give Dave Sheridan a bad mic. Anyway, so I'm very happy to be here.
Well, we are very excited to have you here. I especially am. I've always wanted to meet you since I became a fan. Now it's a late fan, but since I became a fan, I've always wanted to meet you, and I finally got to meet you for the first time in Spooky Empire. I was sitting next to your table.
Oh, that's right. I think I just.
Well,
Okay.
how can you forget this mess?
That's what I
of
always say.
Humid hair. So excited. So when I was told you were gonna be here, I was like, I screamed. I screamed a lot. I was like, ah! And then when I got the panel list, I'm like, I was so excited and
We can just scream for the whole panel.
I was like a fangirl, like you were a Backstreet Boy. I was freaking out. It was so great. So anyway.
Yeah, it's been so fun. And speaking of Backstreet Boys, so I came here directly. Do you guys know the show Practical Jokers?
Yes.
So those guys are dear friends of mine. Q was in the 4th Hatchet movie. And so they do a cruise, and this was the 5th one. And for whatever reason, they've had me be part of these cruises. And all I do is I show one of my movies when I do a Q&A. And that's it for the cruise. So it's just like a free vacation. But Joey Fatone, who I think In Sync, is that him?
Yeah.
Yeah, I should know this.
You better get your tribe right.
But someone gave him a bootleg shirt, and it was In Sync on the shirt, but it says One Direction. And he wore it 3 of the days of the cruise. I thought that was so funny.
Oh, that's wild.
So funny. But now at least I know which one of those boys. I'm a metalhead, so I was never into that stuff. And I always feel bad because I've known him for so many years, but I didn't know which of those horrible bands he was in.
On the flip side, I know several people who are in metal bands, right? I'm a Broadway girl.
Oh,
And
okay.
show tunes and big band all the way, and 50s rock and roll. So I'm like, I don't know any of the horrible bands you've been in.
Speaking of Broadway shows, this is a really good lesson to it. So my whole life I've always wanted to be in the show for Little Shop of Horrors. The show is so good. I mean, the movie was amazing, but the show is fantastic because the plant, spoiler, wins at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've always wanted to play Oren, the dentist, my whole life. And so when I was in college, I went to Hofstra University, where their theater program is incredible. And they were doing Little Shop of Horrors. And I went to audition, and especially back then, because I had a band called Haddonfield, I was a professional singer. And so I went to audition, and I could hear all the dudes auditioning for Audrey 2, The Plant. And these were incredible soul singers. And I bitched out because they sounded so good, and I left. So then the play happens 3 months later, and the guy who played the dentist, you're not in here, are you? Nigga, he sucked. And afterwards, I said to the director, he was like, how'd you like the show? I'm like, it was great. I'm like, the dentist was a little weak. He goes, yeah, only 2 people auditioned.
Wow.
So, never quit on something, the worst that would have happened is I wouldn't have gotten the part. And in this industry, you're told no 99% of the time. Hatchet would never get made. I don't know if you guys know this story, but when the script went around town in 2004, back then it was called Victor Crowley, and every studio passed, but I got great feedback. It was like, the writing's great, and we want to hire you for other stuff. We want to hire you for other stuff. And they say, because this was like 2004, and the trend in horror was remakes, PG-13, and torture movies. And so a major studio's rejection was, the writing's great, but this will never get made because it's not a remake, it's not a sequel, and it's not based on a Japanese one. And for those of you who remember, I made that the tagline on the fucking poster, the rejection from a studio that I will not name because Universal Studios is a huge... And I couldn't get a meeting at Universal for almost 8 years because I made fun of their rejection as the poster for the movie. But that was exactly why that movie needed to get made, because for all of us, that's what we wanted, was something that wasn't a remake, a sequel, or based on a Japanese one in 2004. So anyway, but yeah, so rejections can sometimes be awesome, and never don't try something, because the worst that's gonna happen is you're told no, and you will survive. But I totally bitched out on Little Shop of Horrors, and maybe someday, if I go back to college like Rodney Dangerfield or something.
Were you afraid they were like gonna laugh at you or just tell you no? What was your fear when you left?
I just could hear the guys auditioning for the plant, and I knew I wasn't that good. But that's a completely different style of singing.
It's a different part, yeah.
Yeah, and these were all like trained, like just awesome soul singers, but they were so good. I'm like, I'm not that good, and I just left. Huge mistake.
Yeah.
Never thought I'd be talking about that.
That's what you get when you get me.
Perfect.
Okay, Adam, I would just love to go back to the very beginning for you on your directing journey. How did this passion for directing start?
Okay, so it goes all the way back to when I was a kid playing with my Star Wars figures and my He-Man action figures. They're not dolls, they're action figures. I noticed as I would play with them, I would position my head like where the angle would be. And especially with Star Wars, when I would play with my friends, if they were doing anything with their toys that wasn't what the characters would have done in the movie, I would throw a fit. Like if Han Solo started shooting at Chewbacca, I'd be like, what do you, stop. That would never happen. So even back then I was thinking that way. And then, I don't know, I think the second time I saw E.T. was what made me really want to direct, because I loved it the first time I saw it. I was 8 years old. But the second time, I'm thinking to myself, like, why am I crying? I know it's not real. E.T. didn't even look real. But like, how are they doing this? And it was the music, it was the script, it was all of it. I don't know how many people know this, but there's a story about E.T. where the sound mixers, that's like the final point in the movie where they mix all the sound and the sound effects, the score hadn't been delivered yet. So they mixed the whole movie without John Williams' score. And all of them were like, this is the worst movie ever made. This is so bad. And then Steven Spielberg and John Williams show up and they're like, here, now add the music. And by the end, they're all bawling, crying, and they're like, this is a classic. So, but I loved stories like that. And it also helped that, like, the guidance counselor in school, whenever I said, I want to be a filmmaker, they'd always go, what do you really want to do? Because it's a 1 in a million chance that you're going to be able to make a career at this. But thankfully, I guess, I hate saying lucked out, because there's some luck to it, but luck is also how hard you work to be ready for that moment if it happens.
Yeah, I mean, I said this to someone last night I was sitting with, and I heard it somewhere, and I know it's probably like some weird, like very popular prop but everyone says, you're so lucky. I'm like, a little bit it's dumb luck. But I worked my ass off to get here right now where I'm sitting, And the quote is, luck is when preparation meets opportunity.
Yes.
I've been preparing for this my whole life. No, but I've been preparing for this for a few years in growing my brand as a podcaster. And then the opportunity came and I was like, ready for it. Just like you.
Yeah, and no one's ever gonna give you permission, so you can't wait for that. Especially in this industry, the people that are like waiting for their chance, that's never gonna come. You have to create your own chance. So if you want to direct, you usually have to write, or at least know a writer who's a good writer, so that you have the material to go out with and try to get the financing for it. But I started in 2005. There were still video stores. There was still physical media. So for a horror movie, if you could keep the budget under like 1.5 million, which might sound like a lot, but that was nothing back then, because we still shot on film and everything. But once video stores went away and physical media went away, then it was like rampant piracy for years. And now it's streaming, which we just had the strike, which will hopefully try to change things. But it's been getting harder and harder to actually get something real made since the moment I started. So my career's been fighting an uphill battle while the floor has been falling out of the industry. But it's always weird to tell those stories here because I'm preaching to the choir. If you're at a horror convention, obviously you really care about this stuff. You have no problem buying the Blu-ray or buying the posters or the action figures or coming to conventions to meet people. But it's all the rest of those assholes. They just think everything should be free. But it's a business. If it doesn't make money, you're never gonna get to make another one. Has anyone seen Digging Up the Marrow?
Yes.
So none of us got paid to make that. We just did it like basically with our own money because it was such a weird movie. And so all I said is, I'm making a movie on documentary. It's a documentary on monster art. And then no one was interested, which was what I wanted because I didn't want anyone looking. Because if you think about it, if I was to pitch that movie a year before it came out, we're all gonna be playing ourselves, except for one guy who's going to be played by Ray Wise, who everyone knows, and we're hunting for monsters. It sounds like the worst idea ever, but when you see it and how we like suspended disbelief by playing ourselves, it makes sense. Anyway, the movie came out, somebody bought the DVD, ripped it, and put it on YouTube that day. So in the first 6 days, it was illegally downloaded over 275,000 times. And that's just that one file. So that's not counting Pirate Bay and the torrent sites. So we had a sequel planned, and the sequel all took place down in the Marrow. So you're gonna see the whole world, all the monsters that Decker had shown photos of, and it was gonna explain the stuff that we purposely didn't explain. And so after that first week, the distributor called and they're like, we have good news and bad news. The good news is your movie's a huge hit. The bad news is none of your fans paid for it, so the sequel's dead. And that was it. So I know nobody in here does it, but next time you're gonna steal a movie, just remember what you're doing. It's just like I used to all the time. I would like talk about this. They don't care. So, but
Someone said in the Terrifier group, does anyone know where I can download so-and-so for free? And someone's like, why would you want to do that?
when I'm not as active on social media anymore, just because in these last few years it's just become a friggin' hellscape and a trash fire of people being angry about stuff I don't even know if they know what they're angry about half the time. But like I'll post something like, here's a trailer for the new movie I'm doing, and all the comments are like, link please, link please, link please, and it's just like flat. But then you get to come and do a convention and meet the people who do support it, who do care, and look them in the face and say thank you. And it just means everything. And I wish I got to do this more often. But when you're on a movie as a director, you're on it for like 18 months. I wish Felissa and David right now. Actors are useless. They're only there for a few days. And then they go and say that every line that you liked that they said in the movie was ad-libbed. It wasn't ad-libbed. Although I do have a great Dave Sheridan ad-lib that didn't go in the movie. But at the end of Hatchet 4, Victor Crowley, spoiler for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, his character, before he dies, he looks at Laura Ortiz and says, I would have had your babies. and then he runs at Victor Crowley and something awful happens to him. So we go to shoot the first take and he looks at Laura Ortiz and he goes, "Take care of my identical twin brother," and runs. And they go, "Stop, stop, stop." And he throws a fit. He's like, "I know how these movies work. Why does Perry Shag get to keep coming back? I want to come back."
He's not wrong. He's not wrong.
That joke would have been so much better if he was sitting here.
So, Hatchet is such a beautiful gore fest, and it only got more gory, whatever, California Public Schools, as the franchise went on, and it's amazing. Did you always set out to create such an amazing, like, effects movie, or did it just sort of, like, happen organically?
I knew I always wanted it to be practical effects. I wanted it to feel like the stuff that I grew up on from the 70s and the 80s, because there was a thing, especially with the slasher movies in the 80s, where like Michael Myers and Jason and Freddy, they were like the heroes of the movies, even though they were the bad guys, and like we loved seeing them. And then the effects were like this magic show of trying to figure out how did they do that. The fact that we all knew the names of the effects artists back then. And so I just didn't like where I saw the genre going in the mid-2000s. I think there's room for all of it. Like, I will defend the right for a Serbian film to exist, just like I will one of my own movies. But I'm just personally not into that. Like, I don't want to punish the audience. I don't want to have people leave sick or disturbed. I just wanted it to be fun again. And so, yet, what's interesting is the MPAA had the hardest time with Hatchet and not the other stuff that was coming out at the time. And so I famously went to trial over it, which you should never do because you're gonna lose. But I'm like, I'm gonna win, I'm gonna change the world. And so I fought back because they gave Hatchet an NC-17. And I'm like, there's no sex in this movie, nobody even smokes a cigarette, there's very little swearing, and there isn't a single realistic death in this movie. And so, meanwhile, you had Saw and Hostel, or the Hills Have Eyes remake with that like vicious rape scene, and they bit the head off the bird. And again, I like that stuff too. But how is that okay? But me having a undead swamp monster ghost chasing a bunch of comedians around a swamp with a gas-powered belt sander, which doesn't exist in real life. And then like the blood is shooting 50 feet in the air. I'm like, shouldn't you be like okay with this? And the problem was my movie was an independent movie that just so happened to make it into theaters, so they needed to snuff it out. So I went to the trial, and all of the people, okay, there's a documentary called This Film Has Not Yet Been Rated by Kirby Dick, you should watch it. That was made around the same time, so those were the same exact people that I faced off with. First of all, when you drop your movie off to be rated with the MPAA, they won't even let you see their faces. A little slot opens with eyes in it, I swear to God, and you have to pass it through. And then this team of soccer moms who are actually being fucking paid by Sony, they don't tell you that, they rate your movie. But it's not censorship, they're just suggesting what you should take out, and if you don't do that, then it can't play in theaters. But it's not censorship. And then they came back with a list of what they wanted cut out, and it was everything. Everything. They wanted Victor Crowley to run after Mrs. Primadio, grab her by the jaw, and then cut to the next scene. And I'm like, if you don't show and the fact that I did it in one take practically, and they're like, you don't need it. You don't need it. And I'm showing them like the awards that it was winning at festivals and standing ovations, and no. So we had the trial, they brought me in. Joan Graves from the MPAA got to speak first, and she was basically saying, I'm a disgusting human being, the movie's pornographic. It was so hard to listen to. And at one point, okay, sorry, I should back up. There's a famous story, some of you might know, when the PMRC was putting warning labels on records. And Dee Snider, John Denver, and Frank Zappa were the only three to try to stand up for the music industry. And they went all the way to the Supreme Court. And Dee Snider basically like fed Tipper Gore her own asshole. They weren't expecting him to be that smart. And he purposely walked in denim and the long hair, pulled his speech out from his back pocket and unfolded it, and all the senators are like, this is gonna be a joke. And he fucking destroyed them. So he called me as I was walking in and he goes, listen, you're gonna lose. Don't let them see you cry. And I'm like, I'm not gonna lose. He goes, okay, but when you lose, just don't let them see you cry. And I'm like, I got this, D. And then when Joan Graves started in on like, my parents must be so disappointed and shit, and cause I can't punch her in front of everybody. And I'm like, just had to take it. And then I made my case. Now they're supposed to bring in 12 industry professionals, not to rate your movie, but just judge, were you treated fairly or should there be a second look? They marched in 12 people from an old age home. I'm not making this up. One dude was in a walker, and when they sat down and somebody goes, the film you're about to see is called Hatchet, and they all go, ugh. And then the old man, the screen's here, he's like this the whole movie. And I'd seen it all over the world at this point. There's certain jokes that work. They didn't laugh at a thing. And at one point I actually yelled from the back of the theater, come on! And so I got to do my rebuttal. And I talked about the Hills Have Eyes remake and Saw and Hostel. And I'm like, these are movies that are like realistic. It's torture. You're watching people suffer and scream for their lives. You're watching women be treated so horribly. These movies can be very misogynistic. And like what I'm doing is trying to go back to a time when it was fun. This is fantasy. It's not realistic. Everyone walks out of these movies and they're smiling. And I'm not asking for a PG-13. I'm asking for an R. You should be 18 or with a parent to see it. What is wrong with that? How is this pornographic? And then Joan Graves just smiling and she goes, has anyone in this room seen the films that Mr. Green just referenced? The Hills Have Eyes remake, Saw, or Hostel? And of course all the elderly people are like, what? And she just goes, those are all stricken from the record. Go on. And I lost. And then I didn't know yet I lost. They put Joan and I in a different room while they deliberated for all of 10 seconds. And she goes, call my office after this. I can help you make this a better movie.
Oh.
And I'm like, a better movie? And then they went so far, so the poster for Hatchet that you guys all know in America, it's just a black poster with a hatchet on it. They banned that and said it was pornographic. So the solution, we had to go through 20 other posters and then we just submitted it again and we made the blood brown and then it was okay. So thankfully though, the power is now gone with them. They don't have the power they used to have because movie theaters are failing so badly, they'll fucking put anything in there. Thank God for Terrifier 2.
Yes.
With Hatchet 2, I circumvented them, and AMC had a program called AMC Independent, and they were going to put Hatchet 2 in theaters, unrated, in major multiplexes. So I went so overboard with the gore in that one. The double chainsaw with the dude's balls coming out and stuff. I was just trying to make them angry at that point. And we got it into theaters, and it was this triumphant moment. And some of you might remember this, and then if you went to see it, it wasn't there. They pulled it from all screens in the first 24 hours and said nothing. And so my lawyers are like, everyone knows what happened here, let other people have this fight. You're gonna go on to make other movies. You can't keep fighting with the MPAA, you gotta stop. So I didn't say anything, and I had to listen to people be like, Adam Green pulled his own movie from theaters as a stunt. I wish I was that powerful that I could do that, but the movie got pulled. But now, 12 years later, after the pandemic, and theaters are like, we will fucking play anything. And then Terrifier 2 is like, here you go. And you guys all went.
Yes.
And it was a hit. And so now hopefully more and more people are gonna start doing that. So as much as I'm happy I was first, I really wish I was second. Because it worked out much better for them than it did for me. But still.
You can be third. You can
Third,
go
that's fine.
right back around.
Yes.
Can we, we had a re-release of Terrifier 1. Can we get some re-releases of the Hatchet series?
Sure.
One a year?
Sure. That would be fun.
So, do we have any audience questions in the back? Yes, yeah.
So I have to ask about your involvement in this wonderful movie you guys should all see. It's a horror anthology comedy that's very over the top and Just curious, in light of your other, what kind of guff you received and just what it was like making the Diary of Anne Frankenstein.
Okay, so my segment in Chillerama is called The Diary of Anne Frankenstein, and I was assigned that title because originally it was Adam Rifkin and Tim Sullivan. There were 4 of us who made it: Adam Rifkin, Tim Sullivan, Joe Lynch, and myself. And they already had the title, but they didn't know what it was going to be. And they're like, and Adam Rifkin goes, "You should do that one because you're Jewish, so you can get away with it." And I go, "You're Jewish too," and he goes, "I'm not touching that." And so once I came up with making it, first of all, doing it all in German and black and white, and having the whole thing making fun of Hitler and not making light of the Holocaust in any way or what happened with the Frank family, then I felt comfortable doing it. And thankfully, like critically, most people say that that's the funniest one, which is a huge compliment. But that's one of my favorite things I ever made. We shot it in 4 days. I had the crew home after 8 hours each day. It was the easiest thing. We were picture locked a week later. And then the other 3 assholes went. And they all went over budget. They couldn't friggin' do it. They were like, it was awful. Now Lynch had an excuse because he had to do all the wraparounds and stuff. But Wadzilla went $100,000 over budget. It looks awesome. And then there was that second one that was, is that what it's called? So we couldn't get distribution over that one. And not because of the gay theme, which is what we liked. Because back then there was gay and lesbian cinema and then mainstream cinema. And we were like, why does it have to be separate? Let's mix it. But that short was just not. You guys, you saw it. And so foreign distributors would be like, if we could remove that one, the movie would be 92 minutes, and they're like, and it would work, but it's just, it's not good. It's not funny. And but I'm like, well, when you own it, you can take that part out because you can do whatever you want with it. Make it a bonus feature. Make it, and they're like, and then everyone will say we're homophobic for taking out the gay one. So we're not touching this. So that movie has never been distributed outside of the U.S. in one other place, and that was devastating. But I think over time, people have found an appreciation for that one. But that was hard. Never make an anthology with your friends.
I was cosplay as a Bear one day because I actually enjoyed that one, but not as much as that.
And there are people who enjoy it, and that's the thing. It just, but like universally and critically, that was the one where people are like, it's a musical with people who can't sing, and the songs aren't good, and I think the S&M angle of it was offensive to gay people for some reason. They're like, oh, so why are the gay characters raping everyone? Why is that what they do? And I got it. I'm like, because that was my problem with it. The first draft of the script, God, I'm not supposed to be talking about any of this. The first draft of the script opened with there's 2 people having sex in a van, which is still in the movie, and a little boy opens the back door. In the original script, the little boy gets sprayed in the face with, and we were like, dude, you can't do that. And he goes, oh, you can make one about Hitler? And I'm like, I'm not shooting a load at the kid's face. Like from that point forward, it was just not good. And so, but in hindsight, and there have been screenings where people show the movie without the second segment. It starts and the film skips. We have nothing to do with that. It's something that fans have made, and it is a very different movie. But I do respect that Tim made something that was considered gay and lesbian cinema at the time, and that I love that we wanted it in a mainstream thing because it was 2010. It was now, 14 years later, that's not such a weird thing, but at the time we did take a lot of shit for that, and I'm proud of the fact that we included it all back then. So I think that movie keeps continuing to find a life of its own, but Anne Frankenstein is my baby, and I was at dinner one night and Mel Brooks was sitting next to me. This dude is such a fucking badass that when he goes to dinner, he sits down, pulls out a stack of headshots, puts it down next to him because he knows everyone in that restaurant's gonna come up and he's just like, here you go, here you go, which is so cool. But that was such a tribute to him, and everyone's like, say something, because we had heard he had seen it. But I couldn't be that guy to be like, I'm the guy who made the Diary of Anne Frankenstein. You never really want to say that to anybody, do you? But I missed my chance. So I probably should have said something, and I should have auditioned for Little Shop of Horrors, but I didn't.
See, all those times where you just like gut it out, you're like, damn it. So just do it. Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. Isn't that another slogan?
Yeah, we might get sued for that one.
Yeah. Okay. Just don't
Just
do
don't
it.
bitch out.
Don't bitch out. That's
It's just
right.
like asking out somebody, like in high school, asking the girl to the dance or asking the guy out or whatever. Just do it. The worst thing that's going to happen is they're going to say no, and you will survive. So for those of you, I've already met so many people who are like, well, I'm a writer, I'm trying, I don't know. Just do it. Just do it. You never know. You never know. And look at some of the shit that gets made. We could all write better stuff than that, right? Half the stuff I've made, you could all probably write better stuff than that. And somehow I did it, so you can do it too.
And I'm like, sure, yeah, the first few times you may really suck, but you got to get through that sucky phase to improve and get better and create masterpieces like Hatchet.
Yes. Is anybody in here doing anything artistic? Whether it's writing, film, art, makeup effects, and yeah, see, so like, just don't give up. And everyone's gonna always tell you no, or why it's not good enough, or why it's too hard, or why it's not gonna happen. But we all hear that. So it's the ones who don't listen to that and keep going. I mean, improve. If you're getting valid criticism, take it. Because there's also the people who think everything they do is great and perfect, and nothing ever is. But yeah, just don't give up.
I have a comment. We need Holliston season 3.
Yes.
Badly.
There is nothing I want more in my life than to make a 3rd season of Holliston. So there were 6 seasons of Holliston planned and then a movie. And the 3rd season had just been greenlit. It was written. The cast had just because the cast doesn't get to read it until I'm done writing it. And then we bring everyone together and we have a day where we read through all of it. And then Dave died. And then it was literally 8 days later, Comcast and Time Warner merged and they dissolved FearNet. And so, and then in my personal life, I found out my wife was divorcing me, all in a week. And so it was a really rough time for a few years after that. But when we gave Shudder Holliston, we gave it to them for no money. We're like, just put it on there. And if it gets a good response, all we want is the 3rd season. Now the average sitcom, like Big Bang Theory for instance, it's like $7 million an episode before the cast salaries. And those guys were getting like $1 million an episode, right? But even just figure $5 million an episode of a 22-minute sitcom on network television. We did a season of Holliston for $800,000 because none of us were getting paid. The guest stars, everyone just did it because they loved it. So we said to Shudder, we will do a 3rd season for the same price we did the other ones, and you'll get the first 2 seasons. So 3 seasons of a show that already has a big following, and all we need is the $800,000 to make the season. And the only thing on Shudder that was talked about more on social media that year was Joe Bob, because people, sorry if this spoils it for you, Joe Bob is not live. I'm always shocked that people think it is. He's literally at the convention downstairs and the show's on and people are like tweeting, live tweeting. But that's the only show they had. And so we were like, this is a surefire thing. And then, but they just don't want to spend any money at all. And so.
Did you try Screenbox or anything like that?
Not yet. But then the other issue is, for the first few years, we still looked exactly as
See, I like that though. You're
You can
getting
write that
older now.
in.
Yeah.
Well,
That
the
would
joke
be cool.
originally, because season 3 was taking so long, it was going to open. We were going to recast ourselves with elderly people and open the show that way. Like that's how long it's been, and then come back to ourselves. But I don't know. Maybe I could get back in that shape. But that was hard, man. That was like a year with like a personal trainer. I didn't eat anything that tasted good for like a year. I don't recommend it, but I had fucking abs and shit. It was awesome. Never again. I'd much rather not have abs and be happy.
Hello. You've said
Awesome
that.
shirt.
Thank you. So you said you've thought of Hatchet in your childhood. How different was it from when it was actually on the screen? Like, were there any major changes to Victor Crowley or the story or anything like that?
So the question was, because I thought of Hatchet as a child, how different was it on screen? I've never really thought about that, but not much. The only things that are different is when you write it, you're picturing things one way, but then you get the budget that you have to work with. There's, again, I'm not supposed to announce this yet because it hasn't been publicly announced, but there's a thing that rhymes with box set coming this spring for Hatchet with the 4 movies and new stuff. And so
What could it be?
but I didn't say that.
So do you know when this will be announced officially?
I don't know officially, but let's just say probably April or May it'll be out. But I haven't seen the artwork yet. I have at one point. Okay, I can't tell that one, but okay.
I'm
So-
gonna cut it out of the video. Just
Okay. At one point, their idea for the artwork, there's a picture, I have it at my table. It was taken during the first one, where Kane in the Victor Crowley costume is holding my severed head. They wanted that to be the cover. And I'm like, what? There's 4 movies with like 40 awesome kills in it. That's not even in the movie. They're like, yeah, I know, but it's your thing. I'm like, if you do that, I will kill you. Because I'll take all the shit for that. They're like, why is he on the cover of it? So they supposedly killed that idea. But there's 2 new hours of bonus features that I personally made. For those, I don't know if anyone here is going to remember this, but when Hatchet was getting made, this is way before anyone was ever announced or anything. We were posting nightly journals, the crew, the cast, everyone was posting stuff each night about what it was like making the movie. And we were sharing photography and storyboards. And then as soon as Anchor Bay bought the movie, they deleted that site. So most people have never seen that stuff. So I got all the cast and all the crew to come back in and read their journals in their own voices. So all those journals are together with all the set photography. There's 1 new photo every 4 seconds for a full hour. Like, you see every little bit of the makeup effects and how we did it, and in, like almost like in real time. And then there's another one that's Will Barrett, who's the director of photography and a producer, Sarah Albert, who's the producer, and myself, telling all the stories that we couldn't tell on the regular releases. Will getting, do you know what chiggers are? Yes. Will got one in his asshole. That story's on there. There's so many funny stories, but then we also get super real about financially the way we've been taken advantage of, and they're leaving it in. We're like, the first thing they're gonna do is cut that part out, because if you ever listen to a commentary and it goes silent for a few seconds, and you're like, why did they stop talking? It's because they said something the distributor doesn't want you to know. So, but so far, they haven't touched it. But yeah. So there are stories in that about how the limitations just had to change things on the fly. One more quick story about that. So there's a scene in the first one, there's a flashback to Victor Crowley, not as a child, but grown up, when the kids come to the house, they're throwing firecrackers, the door catches on fire, Mr. Crowley comes home, chops down the door, and hits him in the face. So we had to build the Victor Crowley house way out in the woods. The whole movie was shot in California. And so we scouted it. A fire marshal had to come and okay the area where we built the house. And then they spent 2 weeks building the whole Crowley house. Then the first day of shooting, that's what we're gonna film. We had these things called condors. They're 2 huge things that spill light everywhere. Both of them got stuck in the mud and couldn't get up to set. So the whole movie had to be lit on little light stands, which is why the lighting looks like they're on a football field half the time. So that all happened on day 1. And then a new fire marshal shows up. And all a fire marshal does on a movie set is say, don't smoke, don't smoke. And then they go to sleep. That's their night. And it's a union job, and they're getting paid more than anyone else on that set. So the guy shows up, he's like, don't smoke, don't smoke. I'm like, no, go to sleep. And he goes, wait a minute, is that an oak tree near that house? And we're like, what? Yeah, that's an oak tree over there. We're like, so? He's like, well, there's a branch that's 20 feet near where you're gonna set this fire. You can't burn this down. What? You're telling us now? And he's like, yeah, you can't set a fire here. So our whole first night of shooting is now gone So Brian McBrien, that's his real name. The production designer, how much did his parents hate him? The production designer grabs a chainsaw and just sawed off the front of the Crowley house, and they moved it into the parking lot. And that's where we did that scene. So if you go back and watch the movie, you'll never be able to tell what's in the woods, what's in the parking lot, and like, that's how wonderful the crew was that I had. I was ready to fucking give up. I was like, well, that's over. They were like, no, we can figure this out. And we did. But like stories like that are in there and you actually see how it all happened. Because when the movie originally came out, the distributor doesn't want people hearing that stuff because then they claim, oh, I could tell when I watched it. I made that mistake with Hatchet 2. It world premiered in London. And I was so excited about how hard that movie was to make and how we did it that I spilled every secret in the Q&A, and then every review was, you could tell that it was on a soundstage, you could tell that it was, no you did, it's because I told you. So now I know better. But now that it's 19 years ago this March we shot Hatchet 1, 19 years ago. So now it's time and we can tell all that stuff. So the box set's gonna be worth it to check out, especially if you don't already own everything. All the original special features are gonna come with it. It's gonna be good. I don't know if it's gonna be 4K or what, but just a little secret, 4K is fake. It doesn't make any difference, you're getting ripped off. Sorry. But unless you have a 400-inch TV, you can't tell the difference. Except for the case like Flash Gordon, movies where they go back and rescan it. Yeah, it does look better, but have you seen Flash Gordon in 4K? Don't you wish you hadn't? So yeah, don't worry so much about the 4K yet, because now there's also 8K, because it's like iPhones. It's like, this is the 5G, but now it's the 6G, and we're all like, I need that. Like, we don't. But anyway, yeah, the box set's gonna be awesome, and I'm not supposed to announce it yet, so we didn't have this conversation, but it's probably coming in April.
Yay!
I think I answered 2 questions. This is my problem. I can't stop talking. So
Oh,
when
we
he
love
comes to my
stories.
table, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so happy to meet you. And I don't stop, so I apologize, but I'm really, really happy to be here. I love you guys so fucking much. You have no idea. I would not have a career without you.
So, as you said, the whole franchise is the most amazing, beautiful, terrific kills, right? One of the segments I have on my podcast, first one out the gate, favorite kill. What's your favorite? I know it's like picking your favorite child. Or maybe favorite to accomplish, perform.
Okay, whoa.
Whichever is good for you, Dan.
Okay. All right, wait.
Or both.
I know, this is hard. All right, I'm gonna pick 2 favorites. The first one, it's probably always gonna be Mrs. Formaggio getting her jaw ripped in
By
half.
the way, shout out to Patrika Darbo.
Yes.
For being such a trooper on that. She loves you so much. I talk to her all the time and she adores you.
She is the best, and Kane really went after her. Like, he doesn't hold back. And for him to grab her that violently by the head and yank her back, I mean, she's an older woman. I mean, not at the time, she was like 18.
That's right,
And then to
Patrika.
stick his dirty fingers in her mouth and stretch her jaw back, like, and she just went for it, and it was awesome. Then in the 4th one, Felissa Rose getting her arm torn off and shoved up through her. Little secret with that. In the first movie, there's a classic line where Mercedes McNabb finds her phone, it's playing the Dawson's Creek theme, and instead of calling for help, she looks to see what calls she missed, and she goes, ew, Scott Barnes called me. So Scott Barnes is my childhood friend. I make fun of him whenever I can. In Hatchet 4, when Felissa's head with the phone coming out of it gets shoved into the airplane window, and Laura Ortiz is about to get it and it starts ringing, if you freeze frame it, it's not only says Scott Barnes calling, but it's his fucking picture. So if we make a 5th one, I'm putting his real phone number in the movie. But that kill, seeing that with an audience, because he rips her arm off and everyone's like, I've seen that before. But then to fist her with her own arm, and on the Impractical Jokers cruise that year, we showed the movie and everyone was asking about that kill, and I'm like, oh, we call that one the ultimate fisting. And this little kid on the boat, his parents must have put him up to it, comes up to the microphone and he goes, I have a question. I'm like, go ahead. And he goes, what's fisting? And Kane and Q both went down to the floor. And I'm like, left standing there, and I don't know what to say. So I was like, when a man and a woman really, really love each other and have run out of things to do. And his parents stood up and they're like, stop. But the hardest one to pull off was the double chainsaw in Hatchet 2.
Yeah.
Because that chainsaw is a redwood chainsaw. It weighs 125 pounds. Kane can't carry it. Don't tell him I told you that. You know what like actors have riders where they can request the special foods and stuff they want in their trailers. You would think Kane would want like Jack Daniels and dead babies or something. You know what he wants? Peanut butter and jelly sandwich. He's not that tough. So he can't carry the.
That is going online.
He can't. Alright, I'm gonna get the shit kicked out of me. But he can't. No human being could carry one of those chainsaws by themselves. So there's two other guys with cables that we digitally erase who have to walk with him that are carrying it over the stage. Then he has to put it between two actors. There's no actual blade on the chainsaw when we're shooting because we don't want to castrate the two actors. That would be fucking hilarious. And then the actors are in harnesses where there's 4 other people who are lifting them and flying them in the air. So to time that, to have Kane go under them and have them lift, and then the bodies that are pre-split on PVC pipe to all split apart and have like, because it happens in like the span of I think 8 seconds. But if you watch that like frame by frame, what went into doing that? And when my makeup effects guy, Robert Pendergraft, read it, he quit. He was like, I have to use CG or you can't do it. I'm like, you can't use CG, I know you can do it. And then I tell him my ideas, which were bullshit, it didn't work at all. But he did figure it out, and it's so good in the movie, and that there's no CG in it. So that's the one I'm probably the most proud of, but it's the face rip and the fist.
Those are all 3 great options. Thank you very much. Everyone, give it up. Yep. Can't take me anywhere, so.
Hey guys.